So in this class I want to discuss with you business law topic. So whatever I am going to discuss now in this class, so that will be useful for all the students from the examination point of view, and here you can watch my lecture as well as you can take notes also. So to write the answer in the examination, you can copy the answer and you can write same answer in the examination also, and you can listen my lecture and you can take the notes. Both will be useful for you. Okay, let us watch it now. So here I want to discuss with you a topic that is essential elements of a valid consideration. So what is consideration? First of all, consideration means something in return. So in any contract there will be two parties. So two parties must have some benefit whenever they enter into the contract. That is known as consideration. So both should get something in return. So whenever both the parties are going to receive something in return, we can call it as consideration. So consideration is essential element for a valid contract. If consideration is not there in any contract, then that is not a valid contract. So consideration is essential element for a valid contract. But here we are going to discuss what are the essential elements for a valid consideration. If we want to call any consideration as a valid one, then what are the essential elements for that? So before going into the discussion, let us discuss what is consideration first, and then we will go to essential elements of a valid consideration. So here consideration is what already I discussed with you. It is one of the element of the valid contract. And consideration means something in return. So in every contract there are two parties, and there should be something in return from another party to one party, and the second party also must receive something in return from other party. So both should have some benefit out of that contract. So that is known as consideration. So if in any contract consideration is not there, then that is not a valid contract, not enforceable by law. So any agreement which is supported by consideration, then that only is enforceable by law. So without consideration, contracts are not valid. Hope this is clear for everyone. So here Pollock has given one definition for consideration. Let me read the definition once, you can watch it. Consideration is the price for which the promise of other is bought and the promise thus given for value enforceable. This is a definition that is given by Pollock. Okay. So next let us take one example here. So what is that example? X agrees to sell a golden chain to Y. So X is one party. X is agreeing or entering into an agreement to Y that X wants to sell his golden chain to Y. So X is ready to sell his gold chain to Y. And for how much price? 45,000. So X is ready to sell his gold chain for 45,000 rupees to Y. Okay. Here X promises to sell his golden chain, and that is a consideration for Y. So what is a consideration for Y? He is receiving golden chain from X. So X consideration is golden chain. Y consideration is golden chain. And here X is receiving 45,000 rupees from Y. So 45,000 rupees is consideration for X. Okay. So here both parties, X as well as Y, both are having something in return. So X is ready to sell gold chain to Y. So Y consideration, what he is getting? Gold chain. He is going to receive gold chain. And what X is going to receive? 45,000 rupees. So both are going to get benefit out of that contract, out of that agreement. So both have consideration. Okay. So then we can say that it is a valid one, valid consider. If both are having consideration, then that is a valid contract. Okay, so both the parties must have some benefit out of that contract in the agreement. Hope this is clear. That is known as consideration. Okay, consideration means one party should get something, the other party also should get some benefit. Then we can say that there is a consideration. Hope this is clear for everyone. Let us move to essential elements of a valid consideration. So if you want to call consideration as a valid one as per law, then what are the essential elements for valid consideration? Let us discuss all those now. So first one is, it must move at the desire of the promiser. So consideration must move at the desire of the promiser. Promiser means the one who promises. The one who promises to do anything. Okay, so one who is going to who is ready to do anything in the contract. So he is known as promiser. So here this consideration must move at the desire of the promiser. Means what? Here whenever we want to call the consideration as a valid one, it must move from the side of the promiser. Okay, so if consideration is coming from the third party, then it is not a valid consideration. Okay, so consideration should not be at the desire of the other third party. It must move from the side of promiser only. So then only it is known as valid consideration. Okay, so here any services rendered by the promisee. Promiser means one person. Actually we can take him as a offerer. Promisee means acceptor. Okay, so in one contract, if we are calling offerer as a promiser, offerer will become so promisee. So here these two persons. So what here our point is, consideration must move from the side of promiser but not from the side of third party. Okay, so if promisee is doing anything without the request of the promiser, then it is not a valid consideration and it is not enforceable by law. Okay, so whatever offerer says and whatever he is going to give, that should be actually from the desire of the promiser but not from the third party. So promisee has to do and he is actually can receive anything from the promiser if promiser says that. Okay, so consideration should not be from third party side. That is the meaning of this point. So there is one case, there is one famous case here. Let us discuss that. That is Durga Prasad versus Baldev. So this case took place in the year 1880 and let us discuss what is the case here. So D is one person. He promised. So he is a promiser. If anyone promises, we can call him as a promiser. So here D is promiser and what he is saying, to pay P a commission. So here D is ready to pay to P commission. Why? An article sold by him, by P. If P sells any article in a bazaar where actually P is having one shop. So P actually has one shop. He occupied one shop in one bazaar. So what D is promising, if P sells that one article in P's shop, but article is related to D. So D article, if P sells, D is going to pay some commission to P. Okay. So here what actually D said, he is just promising that he will pay commission if P sells the article of D. But what P did here, he spent some money. Why? In the construction of such bazaar. So he constructed a bazaar and he is spending money. And what he is doing, I spent money, so I'm going to sell your article now. You have to give me money whatever I incurred for construction. So here actually he did not construct because D said. Actually he constructed that bazaar. P constructed that bazaar on the request of the district collector. Okay, so here he constructed that bazaar and he kept a shop there because district collector suggested that. Okay, but here D did not suggest that. So P cannot ask construction money from D because here consideration is not moving from the side of promiser. Okay, promiser will pay only whatever he says. Okay, if district collector is requesting P to construct bazaar, then that is the request given by third party. So consideration is coming from third party. So here D is not responsible to pay that. Okay, so here what is our point? Consideration must move from the promiser at the desire of the promiser. So promiser have to have desire, then only he will pay consideration to that party. Here D is just asking P to sell the article in his shop, but P, from on the request of district collector, he constructed a bazaar and he just started a shop and he is selling the articles. And what P is saying to D, that I constructed a shop, a bazaar, and you have to pay money for that, for construction. Okay, construction charges. So here he did not construct the bazaar because that desire is promiser desire. Promiser did not, that D did not ask him. So here consideration is coming at the desire of the promiser. It is moving at the desire of the district collector, not the promiser. So here D is not ready to pay money. So case is in favor of D only because it is moving, consideration is moving from third party, so it is not valid consideration. Okay, hope this is clear for everyone. Let us move to next point. Second one is it means consideration must move from the promisee or any other person. So consideration must move from the promisee. Okay, promisee means the one who is actual, on whom any promise is here we can take the example of offerer and offeree. Just now I told, no. So offerer is a promiser, offeree is a promisee. So consideration must move from the promisee or any other person also. Okay, so it may be from promisee or from any other person also, it is valid one. So what is the first point? It must move from at the desire of the promiser. Here it must move from the promisee or any other person also. So promisee may give the consideration or any other person also may give consideration to the promiser. That is also valid one. Let us discuss what is that actually. So consideration may move from the promisee, or if the promiser has no objection, then it may move from any other person also. So consideration not only move from the promisee if promiser accepts it. If he is not having any objection, then that consideration may move from third party also, from other party also. It may not be from promisee, it may be from other party also if promiser accepts it, if he is not having any objection for that. Okay, that is the second point. In the first point, the consideration must be at the desire of the promiser. He must say whatever promiser says, that only promisee has to do. Okay, that is the first one. And second one is promisee. It must, consideration must move from the promisee or from any other person also if promiser accepts it, if he is not having any objection for that. Okay, here we have one popular case, that is Chinnaya versus Ramaya. So it took place in the year 1882. So what is the case here? I'll read it and I'll explain, you can see that. An old lady made a gift of her property to her daughter. So here one lady, so she actually gifted completely her property to her daughter. And she said, what old lady said, she has given some directions to daughter to pay some certain sum of money to the maternal uncle. Okay, so here property is transferred from old lady to daughter, but what old lady is saying, that daughter has to pay some certain sum of money every month to maternal uncle. Okay, he is brother of old lady and she is directing her daughter to pay every month certain sum of money to maternal uncle. And on the same day, whenever property was transferred, on the same day, daughter executed a writing. She has written on one document in favor of the brother, agreeing to pay annuity. So daughter said that, okay, you transfer the property, I will pay money to uncle every month as an annuity. Okay, every year or every month she is going to pay. So here agreement is in between daughter and uncle. Okay, so actually daughter is ready to pay money to uncle, but in return she is not receiving anything from uncle. She received property from mother. Okay, and she is promising that she will pay annuity to uncle, but in return she is not receiving anything from uncle. Okay, so let us see what happened. Daughter did not pay the annuity and uncle sued to recover it. So later what daughter did, she did not pay annuity to uncle. Okay, she promised that she is going to pay, and she has written on the document that she is ready to pay, but later she did not pay. Then what uncle did, uncle said that uncle sued. He filed a case on daughter that she is not paying money. Okay, then so why actually she said, because I am not, why daughter stopped, because I am not receiving anything in return from uncle, no consideration, so I am not going to pay anything because I received property from mother. Okay, so here that is why she said that she is not going to pay. But what court said, that consideration may move from promisee or from any other person also, then also it is valid consideration. Okay, so actually here who is promising to pay money? Daughter. So daughter is a promiser. There is an agreement now in between uncle and daughter. Daughter is promising to pay to uncle, so daughter will become promiser and uncle will become promisee. So consideration must move from promisee. Okay, daughter is paying annuity, so consideration also must move from promisee, uncle. And if promiser accepts it, it may move from another person also. Here daughter accepted, and she asked her mother that you transfer property, I'll pay annuity. There was no objection to daughter, to the promiser. Okay, so that is why it may move from promisee. So consideration may move from uncle, otherwise from other person also. Here old lady, mother is paying consideration to daughter. Okay, other person, third person is paying consideration or giving consideration to daughter, but promisee is not giving consideration to the promiser, it is moving from other party. And here there was no objection to daughter at the time of agreement. Later she is rejected to pay money, but at the time of agreement she did not have any objection, so she was ready. Okay, so she asked her mother to transfer property and she agreed to pay money to uncle. So here consideration is not moving from promisee, it is moving from other party, that is old lady. Even then that is a valid consideration. Okay, so here agreement is in between uncle and daughter. Daughter has to pay annuity to uncle, but in return she is not receiving anything, that is why she stopped. But what court said, consideration may move from promisee, and if promiser accepts, it may move from other party also. So that is also valid. So promiser, daughter received property from mother, so she has to pay annuity to uncle compulsorily. Okay, that is also valid one. So I think everyone understood this. Let us go to next one. So next one is consideration may be past consideration, present consideration or future. All are valid. So consideration may be past consideration, that is valid. Present consideration also valid. Future consideration also valid. All are valid. So let us discuss what is past consideration, what is present consideration, what is future consideration. So when the consideration for present promise was given before the date of promise, okay, so actually one person is promising to do something, but before that consideration was received, then we can call it as a past consideration. Before the promise any consideration is received, then that is known as past consideration. Okay, so promise to do anything, one person is promising to do something, but that was not done, before that only the consideration is received, then we can call that consideration as a past consideration. Hope this is clear. And let us discuss what is present consideration. Present consideration means, so promise as well as consideration both are actually done simultaneously, then we can call it as a present consideration. Okay, so one party is promising and that party is performing, and consideration also moved simultaneously from one person to another person, then we can call it as a present consideration. Then what is future consideration? So present promise is present promise, but in future consideration will be received. Okay, so they have to perform now, but the consideration will be received in the future, then we can call it as a future consideration. So hope this is clear. Let us move to next point. Fourth essential element for a valid consideration is consideration need not be adequate. Adequate means sufficient. So always consideration may not be sufficient. Okay, it need not be sufficient. So one party may give valuable thing, the other party may give less amount for that. That is also valid consideration. But consideration should be there. Something in return should be there, but it need not be sufficient. Okay, then also it is valid consideration. Adequate means sufficient. So consideration need not be sufficient, even then that is valid. So one person is giving valuable thing to other person, but in return the other party is giving consideration or paying anything less, very less amount for the valuable one. Okay, then also it is valid. Okay, here what is the point? Consideration need not be sufficient, need not be adequate, then also it is valid one. So let us discuss what is that. Consideration means something in return. Something in return must be of some value. Consideration need not be adequate. Promiser is the one who decides whether consideration is sufficient or insufficient. Okay, if promiser is accepting anything from the promisee, then that is valid one, but he has to receive at least some consideration. Okay, it may be less, it may be more. Okay, so then it is valid actually. So here promiser is accepting for any value of consideration from promisee, that is a valid consideration. Let us take one example and let us discuss. A agrees to sell his house worth of rupees 10 lakhs to B. Here A is entering into one agreement to B that A is ready to sell his house worth of 10 lakhs. What is the value of house? 10 lakhs actually. A is ready to sell to B. But for how many rupees? 10,000 only. Okay, value of the house is 10 lakhs actually. But in return what A is doing? A is saying that I will give my house to you worth of 10 lakhs, but you give me only 10,000 rupees. There is consideration for both the parties. Okay, house is consideration for B and 10,000 rupees is consideration for A. But is it sufficient or insufficient? That should be decided by promiser, by A only. So if A is agreeing that yes, it's sufficient for me, you need not to pay 10 lakhs, you pay me 10,000 only, then it is valid one. Sufficient or insufficient, that will be decided by promiser only. If promiser is accepting for less consideration, then also it is valid consideration. Okay, here value of the building, value of the house is 10 lakhs, but in return what promiser, what A is taking? Only 10,000 rupees. He is giving 10,000 worth of property to B. but 10 lakhs worth of property to B, but he is taking in return only 10,000 rupees. Even then that is valid, because A is accepting, and it depends upon A whether consideration is sufficient or insufficient. That should be decided by promisor only. Okay, so if consent is given freely, consent is given means if A is accepting it freely without any force, then it is valid one only. Hope this is clear. Let us move to next point. So next one is consideration must be real. So consideration must be real. It need not be adequate, but it should be real consideration. It should not be illusory one. Okay, so any impossibility is there, physical impossibility, and vague contracts, vague consideration, legally impossible considerations, those are not enforceable by law. Okay, always it should be real. Consideration must be a real thing. Okay, so any physical impossible things, anything are done, those all are not valid one. So it should be a real one. Okay, so next point is consideration must be lawful. So consideration will become lawful when law says that it is acceptable. Okay, so law says it is valid one, then only it will become lawful. If law says that it is not enforceable under law, then that consideration is not a valid consideration. It will become void consideration whenever it is unlawful. So always consideration should be lawful. Okay, when we can treat it as unlawful? Under some situations. So under some circumstances we call that consideration as a unlawful consideration. Okay, so law is not accepting that. Law, in law, under law we cannot enforce it under law. Okay, so what actually are treated as unlawful consideration? So if any consideration is forbidden by law, so law is saying that this is not proper consideration, this is invalid, then that is not a valid consideration. And whenever consideration is a fraudulent one, okay, so any consideration actually it is a fraud consideration, then that time it is not a valid consideration. Next, if consideration means something in return is involving injury to person or property of any other, so both the parties entered into one agreement, and one party is paying money, the other party in return what he is doing, he is going to harm the other person. Okay, so our property of another person is going to do something for the property of other person, then that is not actually correct thing. Okay, so law won't accept it, so we cannot do as per law, so then it will become unlawful consideration. And if court regards anything that it is not it is immoral and opposed to public policy, then that is not a valid consideration. Okay, so this is about sixth point. Let us discuss next one, that is it must be something which the promisor is not already bound to do. So here if promisor in default he has to do or he has to perform anything, and for that if the promisee is giving anything, any consideration, that is not valid one. So this you will understand if you take one example only. So let me read it first. A promised to do what is already bound to do, either by general law or under any existing contract, is not a good consideration. A actually as per law or as per previous contracts or existing contracts, he has to do that. He has to perform something. But again, for performing the same thing, if any consideration he is going to receive from the other party, then that is not a valid one. Okay, he has to perform that as per general law. So for performing that, again if he is going to receive any consideration from other person, then that is not a valid one. Okay, so let us take one example and let us discuss that. A promised to pay money to a police officer. So A is paying money to police officer to investigate into a crime. Actually, what is the duty of the police officer? His duty is actually to investigate the case, to investigate any crime. Okay, so his duty, first of all, his duty is to investigate as per general law and rule. Okay, but here A is promising to pay money to police officer for investigating same case again. Actually, police officer has to do that. Okay, he actually was appointed to do that only, but here again A is paying. We can call it as bribe actually. Okay, so that is not a consideration. If police officer is taking any money from other person to do anything which already he has to do, okay, and that is duty of him actually, so then that is not a valid consideration. The agreement was held to be invalid because the officer is already under the duty to do so. Okay, so hope this is clear for everyone. So in case of any doubts, you can mention in the comment section, and this is complete notes for everyone. You can copy same points for notes and you can write in the examination also for this topic, and whatever you understood here, that is sufficient for this topic. And if you understand the class, like the video, share the video, subscribe the channel. Thank you.